Welcome to the deep dive. You guys have sent in some pretty intense stuff this time. Generative AI, future of work. Kind of got me sweating a little, not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's a big one, but it's not, just the robot takeover story everyone likes to jump to. This article you sent, it digs into how AI could actually make some jobs, well, better, like way better. Augmentation, not just automation.
Okay, so how does that work? Give me an example. What kind of job could AI actually improve? And I don't mean like shaving off a few minutes from your day, but like fundamentally changing it for the better.
All right, imagine you're a surgeon. Not the blood and guts kind, but the one operating on mountains of data. A data scientist. You're looking for those tiny needles in the haystack, those trends that could predict, say, a disease outbreak. Right. Generative AI, that's like strapping on X-ray vision. It can sift through that data so fast, spotting patterns even a human might miss.
So instead of replacing the surgeon, it's giving them superpowers. But what about a musician? How does AI change a creative field like that?
There's a lot of talk about AI writing music, and some of it's surprisingly good. But the really interesting part is how musicians are using AI as like a creative partner. Say you've got a melody stuck in your head, you could hum it into an AI and have it generate different instrumental arrangements. Or feed it some lyrics and bam, it suggests chord progressions you never think of on your own.
Okay, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So AI becomes this collaborator, pushing you beyond your usual creative limits. But this article, it also talks about jobs that are, well, probably going to get automated out of existence. And that's where I start to get a little nervous.
Right. Certain jobs are always going to be easier to automate. Repetitive tasks, think data entry, factory work, even some customer service stuff. This article, it specifically calls out truck drivers as being vulnerable, with self-driving trucks becoming more common, probably within the next decade or two even.
See, that's what gets me. This isn't some distant sci-fi thing. It's happening now. And even if those jobs aren't completely wiped out, the skills you need are going to be completely different, right? This whole skill shift the article talks about.
Absolutely. And we're not just talking about learning to code or talk to robots. It's bigger than that. It's the skills that are going to be most valuable when AI can do all the boring stuff for us. Critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, being adaptable.
Those are some pretty high-level skills, though. And the article, it kind of dances around who's actually responsible for teaching people this stuff. Is it on us to constantly be learning new things? Or do companies and governments need to step up and provide more training?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. No easy answer there. This article, it does point out that every time we've had a big tech revolution, new jobs pop up that no one could have even imagined. 20 years ago, did anyone dream of being a social media manager or an app developer?
Unless they were time travelers, probably not. But that's kind of exciting and terrifying all at the same time, isn't it? I mean, what do we even do to prepare for jobs that don't even exist yet?
Well, instead of trying to guess the job titles of the future, the article, it suggests we focus on those core skills we were talking about. Because no matter what crazy stuff the job market throws at us, those skills, they're like your compass and your hiking boots. They help you navigate any terrain, no matter how weird it gets.
So we've been talking about like the actual tasks we do at work. But this article, it goes deeper. It's asking, how could AI change the whole work experience? And that's where things get really interesting. And maybe a little creepy, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it's like the Wild West out there, new tech popping up everywhere, and the rule book's still being written. The article, it brings up this whole trend of AI being used to, well, monitor workers. And that raises some big questions about privacy, like how much is too much?
Right. There's this example in the article, this company, I won't say what they make, but let's just say they're really into comfortable office chairs, and they're using AI to track everything. How long employees spend on different tasks, even down to like how much time they're typing versus moving their mouse.
And it's not just about time tracking anymore. Some AI systems can actually analyze your emails, read your chats, those casual messages you send on Slack or whatever, and they use it to, get this, gauge employee morale.
Okay, now that's just creepy. So if I send a slightly passive-aggressive emoji, I'm going to get dinged on my performance review. Come on.
It sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi movie, right? But to be fair, the article does point out that some companies say it's not always about being Big Brother. They frame it as like identifying workflow problems or giving employees more personalized feedback.
Okay, sure. And I can see how that could be helpful. Maybe AI could suggest taking a break when it notices you've been staring at a spreadsheet for 3 hours straight. Or like warn you about bad posture before you throw your back out.
Right. There's definitely potential for these technologies to be used in a good way, to actually support employees. But it's still a slippery slope. So how do we make sure these AI tools are empowering us, not just controlling us?
Yeah. How do we walk that line?
I think transparency is key.
Yeah.
Employees should know exactly what data is being collected, how it's being used, and what's being done to protect their privacy. And honestly, we need better laws about this stuff. Clearer guidelines for AI in the workplace. We can't just rely on companies to do the right thing on their own.
100%.
Oh.
And speaking of doing the right thing, I noticed the article barely touched on something. The environmental impact of all this AI.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, isn't it? We could do a whole other deep dive just on that. Because training those massive AI models, that takes a ridiculous amount of computing power, which means a lot of energy and a giant carbon footprint, not to mention all the e-waste from these data centers when they become obsolete.
Right. It's like we're so focused on the shiny new possibilities of AI that we forget to ask the basic questions like, is this even sustainable? What are the long-term consequences?
Exactly. We can't just get swept up in the hype. We need to be critical, question everything, demand transparency, and hold the people creating this technology accountable, developers, policymakers, everyone.
With great algorithmic power comes great responsibility, am I right? Someone put that on a t-shirt. But seriously, this whole conversation is making me think, do I really need the latest phone? How much of my own data am I just, like, handing over to these tech giants without even thinking about it?
Those are the questions we should all be asking ourselves, because the future of work, it's not being decided by some supercomputer in a basement somewhere. It's being shaped by the choices we make every single day as consumers, workers, just people living in this crazy digital age.
So what can we do? This article paints a pretty intense picture, but it doesn't really give us a roadmap, you know? What are we supposed to do with all this information?
I mean, it's not about having a crystal ball, right? It's about knowing what's going on and making choices. Like, instead of just letting tech happen to us, we can actually help shape it.
Okay, so what does that look like in real life? Give me an example.
Let's say you're a teacher, right? And your school's thinking about using some new AI tutoring program. You could just, go with the flow. Or you could actually learn about that program, how it works, what data it's using. You could even, talk to other teachers, maybe even the parents, advocate for some stricter privacy settings, or even come up with a different approach altogether. One that uses the AI, but still keeps that human touch.
So it's about being informed, asking the tough questions, and speaking up. Actually, that feels kind of good, but I gotta say, I'm still hung up on this whole job displacement thing. Even if new jobs do pop up, what happens to the people who are left behind in the meantime?
It's a huge issue. This article, it doesn't sugarcoat that at all. And there's no easy answer, no magic wand solution. But it does make you think maybe we need a whole new approach, like stronger social safety nets, better job training programs, heck, maybe even something like universal basic income.
Whoa. Okay, so we're talking about a fundamental shift, not just in how we work, but our whole relationship to work.
Exactly. I mean, if machines can do a lot of the stuff we do now, what does that make us? What makes us special? What do we actually value? What kind of future do we want? Not just in terms of jobs, but as a society.
Wow. Okay, so as we're wrapping up here, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all this? What's the headline?
The future isn't set in stone. It's not some computer program we're forced to follow. It's a story, and we're all writing it together. So stay informed, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to speak up. That's how we make sure technology works for us, not the other way around.
I love that. It's not a prediction, it's a call to action. And on that note, a huge thank you to our listeners for sending in this material. You guys are the best. Hopefully this deep dive has given you all something to think about.
For sure. Keep those sources coming, folks.